Radha Madhava ki Jai. Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Soter His Divine Grace, the Vaicharanavinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki His Confounder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Soter Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Vaishnava Vrinda ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Govinda Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan ki Kandara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Ajnanatamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurue Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stavitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sta Shri Rupam Shagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopaka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishvari Vishubhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mare Kabando Matsangin Madguru Manmadana Madnistaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute Asadu Sadu Tadayan Natini Chochatakara Hanamuncha Karachinmam Premno Ritkatayo Spura Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. So today we are officially starting the 5th canto, text 1. And I feel very privileged and honored to speak on the 5th canto. And I feel privileged and honored to be in front of all of you nice Vaishnavas, begging your mercy. When I first came to the temple, we were on the marriage of Kardama Muni. And so then we did the whole 3rd canto, and that was a mind blower to come into the temple on the 3rd canto and hear all this, really fantastic things about creation and time and all of Kapila Dev's Shiksha. And then we started the 4th canto. We went through all of that. It was like a whole journey. And I remember when we first started the 4th canto, it was about December or November. Yeah, it was about December 2022. So here we are, starting the 5th canto in January 2026. Oh, in a long time. So, Rajo Vacha Priya Vrato Bhagavata Atma Rama Katam Mune Vihiramata Yanmula Karma Bandha Parabhava Priyavrato Bhagavata Atma Rama Katam Mune Prihe Ramatayan Mula Karma Bandha Parabhava Priyavrato Bhagavata Atma Rama Katam Mune Prihe Ramatayan Mula Karma Bandha Parabhava Raja Vacha Priyavrato Bhagavata Atma Rama Katam Mune Prihe Ramatayan Mula Karma Bandha Parabhava Raja Vacha Priyavrato Bhagavata Atma Rama Katam Mune Prihe Ramatayan Mula Karma Bandha Parabhava Rajo Vacha Priyavrato Bhagavata Atma Rama Katam Mune Prihe Ramatayan Mula Karma Bandha Parabhava Rajo Vacha Priyavrato Bhagavata Atma Rama Katam Mune Prihe Ramatayan Mula
Priyavrato Bhagavata Atma Rama Katam Mune Prihe Ramatayan
Bandha Parabhava. Translate word for word. Raju Vacha King Parikshit said Priyavrataha King Priyavrata Bhagavata the great devotee Atma Aramaha who takes pleasure in self-realization. Katam why Mune O great sage Grihe at home Aramata enjoyed Yat Mulaha having which as the root cause Karma Bandha the bondage of fruitive activities Parabhavaha the defeat of one's human mission. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. King Parikshit inquired from Shukadev Goswami, O great sage, why did King Priyavrata, who is a great, self-realized devotee of the Lord, remain in household life, which is the root cause of bondage, of the bondage of karma, fruitive activities, and which defeats the mission of human life? Please repeat. King Parikshit inquired from Shukadev Goswami, O great sage, why did King Priyavrata, who was a great self-realized devotee of the Lord, remain in household life, which is the root cause of the bondage of karma, fruitive activities, and which defeats the mission of human life. Purport. In the fourth canto, Srila Shukadev Goswami explains that Narada Muni perfectly instructed King Priyavrata about the mission of human life. The mission of human life is to realize one's self and then gradually go back home, back to Godhead. Since Narada Muni instructed the king fully on this subject, why did he again enter household life, which is the main cause of material bondage? Maharaj Parikshit was greatly astonished that King Priyavrata remained in household life, especially since he was not only a self-realized soul, but also a first-class devotee of the Lord. A devotee actually has no attraction for household life. But surprisingly, King Priyavrata enjoyed household life very much. One may argue, why is it wrong to enjoy household life? The reply is that in household life, one becomes bound by the results of fruitive activities. The essence of household life is sense enjoyment. And as long as one sorry about that. The essence of household life is sense enjoyment. And as long as one engrosses his mind in working hard for sense enjoyment, one becomes bound by the reactions of fruitive activities. The ignorance of self-realization is the greatest defeat in human life. The human form of life is especially meant for getting out of bondage of fruitive activities. But as long as one is forgetful of his life's mission and acts like an ordinary animal, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, he must continue his conditional life of material existence. Such a life is called Sarup Vishmriti, forgetfulness of one's constitutional position. Therefore, in Vedic civilization, one is trained in the very beginning of life as a brahmachari. A brahmachari must execute austerities and refrain from sex indulgence. Therefore, if one is completely trained in the principles of brahmacharya, he generally does not enter household life. He is then called a nishtika brahmachari, which indicates total celibacy. King Parikshit was thus astonished that the great king Priyavrata, although trained in the principles of nishtika brahmacharya, entered household life. The word Bhagavata Atmaramaha are very significant in this verse. If one is self-satisfied as is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is called Bhagavata Atmarama. There are different types of satisfaction. Karmis are satisfied in their fruitive activities, Jnanis are satisfied to merge into the effulgence of Brahman, and devotees are satisfied to engage in the Lord's service. The Lord is self-satisfied. He is fully opulent, and one who is satisfied by serving him is called Bhagavat Atmarama. Manushyanam Saheshreshu. Out of many thousands of persons, one may endeavor for liberation, and out of many thousands of persons as attempting to become liberated, one may achieve liberation from the anxieties of material existence and become self-satisfied. Even that satisfaction, however, is not the ultimate satisfaction. The Jnanis and the Karmis have desires, as do the yogis, but devotees have no desires. Satisfaction in the service of the Lord is called akama, freedom from desire. And this is the ultimate satisfaction. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit inquired, how could one who is fully satisfied on the highest platform be satisfied with family life? The word parabhava in this verse is also significant. When one is satisfied in family life, he is doomed because he must already have forgotten his relationship with the Lord. Prahlad Maharaj describes how the activities of family life implicate one more and more. Atma patam griham anna kupam. Household life is like a dark well. If one falls into this well, his spiritual death is assured. How Priyavrata Maharaj remained a liberated Paramahamsa even within family life is described in the next verse. Welcome to the fifth canto, folks. On the stage, Dasa. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravadi Prachadini Nirvishesha Srimati. So we're starting a new canto. We already spoke about this canto is generally associated with the subject of stanam. Atra sargo vishtargascha stanam poshanamutaya nirdo muktirashrayaha. Manvantarish anukara kata nirdo muktirashrayaha. 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. And of these 10 topics, every topic is in every canto, but certain cantos embody that topic more than others. Our acharyas explain. So the fifth canto is generally associated with the topic of stanam, meaning the planetary systems and why living entities are in the places they are. That's an element of spiritual realization. Why was I born in Tucson? Why was I born in Kearney? Why was I born in India or wherever you're born? This is an object, a subject of knowledge in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that comes later on. The fifth canto is famously a heavy canto, meaning that it really focuses a lot on rooting out material life. And how could it not? Bhagavatam is Dharma projito kaitavotar paramo nirmatsaranam satam. It is completely rejecting those religious principles which are born from the materialistic platform. Prabhupada explains them as cheating religions, and those religious principles which are based on dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. They're rejected by the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is presenting the highest truth, which is reality distinguished from illusion for the benefit of all. So it's not always easy to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. If we're really in good consciousness, yeah, it's great to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, but if we're in bad consciousness, it hurts us because we know that Bhagavatam is pulling away our illusions. It's shalakaya, it's opening our eyes to see the truth in the reality of the material world. So the fifth canto is one of those cantos, third, fourth, and fifth canto especially. I remember when I was reading the third canto the first time, I started to cry when I was reading it because it was so disillusioning. I was just really being exposed to the reality of material existence in the third canto. So it's rooting out materialistic life right off the bat. You know, the blunderbuss is that it's speaking of materialistic household life. And the background here is that we heard so much has gone on in the Bhagavatam. First canto is giving us some history of the Bhagavatam. How did Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami come together? And then the famous question is asked at the end of the first canto, what is the duty of a man about to die? What should I do and what should I not do? And then Shukadeva Goswami fires off with these very powerful first 5 verses of the, first 6 verses of the second canto. And various questions are asked. But amongst those questions is, can you explain the line of the great devotee, Swayambhuva Manu? So Swayambhuva Manu was one of the Mahajan devotees. He's a very wonderful and powerful devotee of the Lord. So this question was asked by Vidura to Maitreya. And so what we hear is Maitreya explain the whole line of King Uttanapad, starting with Dhruva Maharaj. And so, even before that, not starting with Dhruva Maharaj, starting with Akuti, Prashuti, and Devahuti. These are the daughters of Maharaj Manu. And so, of course, we heard Devahuti, we heard about Kapila, we heard about Prashuti. Prashuti is the wife of Daksha. And we heard briefly about Akuti in the beginning of the fourth canto. Then you hear about the sons, which is Uttanapad. And then Uttanapad's line is the entire fourth canto. Dhruva, then you hear about King Anga and Vena, Prithu, the Prachetas. And so finally, this line comes to an end. And Maharaj Priyavrata, the other brother, Uttanapad's brother, this whole time in the fourth canto, he was doing austerities. He was perfecting his self-realization. And so now it's been brought up at the end of the fourth canto. So now this fifth canto is starting off with us hearing about Maharaj Priyavrata. And so Shukadev, Maharaj Parikshit's inquiring to Shukadev, how is it that this king who performed so many austerities and who was such a staunch brahmachari, how is it that he has entered into household life and has enjoyed it? And so this is a bewildering question to him, which is a natural question. And so this type of content could seem discouraging for someone in the beginning of their Krishna consciousness or in any stage, because we understand that we're not on this Paramahamsa level that we're going to be speaking about and we're going to be hearing about. So there's an element of rooting out this materialistic household life. It can seem very discouraging, but at the same time, we should understand that the Bhagavatam is always encouraging. It's always encouraging us in whatever position of life we're in to come to a higher stage. And it should be noted that the perfection of life is not sannyas. The perfection of life is not brahmacharya. The perfection of life is not grihastha life. The perfection of life is not vanaprastha life. It's not a varnashram situation. The perfection of life is to become a pure and unalloyed devotee of the Lord. That's the Paramahamsa state. And so the system and institution of varnashram simply exist as a tool by which Krishna has using for the living entities to purify themselves and come to the stage of Paramahamsa. His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj is always encouraging his many household devotees to become Paramahamsa householders. And that is an existing thing. We hear about that, of course, in Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was a Paramahamsa, yet he was situated in the Grihastha ashram. So we should understand clearly our prayojan. What is our goal in acting in Krishna consciousness? Our goal is to serve Radha and Krishna in the very intimate and special mood of Vrindavan. So how are we going to get there? We have to be very honest with ourselves and address our situation. And by addressing our situation, we can apply as much as the Varnashram medicine is necessary, but it is not the end goal in itself. So I was once speaking to my Guru Maharaj, and this is a very touching story for me. And he's very, for me, when he preaches to me, it's very, very fifth canto-esque, very heavy, remain brahmachari type preaching. And then I'll see my Guru Maharaj preach to me like that. And then within a few minutes, talk to his householder disciples and really encourage them in their household life. And so one day I said, Guru Maharaj, I seem like I'm having some doubt here because you're encouraging all your household disciples in one way and you're encouraging me in a completely different way. And he said, yeah, I am. I'm encouraging you in completely different ways because you've made this choice. And so I'm encouraging you in the choice you've made. And they've made this choice and I'm encouraging them in the choice they made. But we're both trying to become Krishna conscious. But it's very difficult to become Krishna conscious if your household life is miserable, in a sense. If you're going to try to do household life, you should have a peaceful household life where you can practice Krishna consciousness and advance steadily. But if you're going to be a brahmachari, it's very, it's not a very good thing to be thinking of household life all the time and to be thinking of sense gratification. So I'm encouraging you in the path that you've chosen. And that was a very encouraging mood. And I was realizing as I was preparing for this class that the Bhagavatam is the same way. The Bhagavatam is encouraging everybody where they're at. And it's showing an example, but ultimately its goal is to be a pure devotee of Krishna. That's the ultimate goal of Bhagavatam. It's not even renunciation in itself. In the Madhurya Kadambini, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that renunciation and bhakti go ill together, which is a very crazy statement. And there are other statements you can say that counter that, so to speak. But the concept is that renunciation is not the goal of bhakti. It's simply the result. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janaya Yashu Vairagyam Dhyanam Chiyata Haitukam. Sutta Goswami explains that by practicing Bhakti Yoga unto Vasudev, Bhagavan Vasudev, Janaya Yashu Vairagyam, one immediately develops causeless knowledge and detachment. So that knowledge and detachment is developed. And so that knowledge and detachment can manifest in any ashram or situation when pure devotional service arises. So we have to be striving for pure devotional service. So ultimately, the goal of all of our study, all of our places and situations in life is to achieve this Krishna consciousness, real and genuine Krishna consciousness, attachment to Krishna. So the question could be asked, why is the Bhagavatam so heavy in regards to this household life? And let it be noted, this is speaking of Grihamedi life. The combination of man and woman, in Sanskrit, the word for woman is called Shri, which means to expand. And so there's this concept that whenever man and woman come together, there's an expansion of material energy. If a man is living alone in an apartment, he may have a couch. He likely has one or two posters, a computer. That's about it. And I've been, when I was in college, I was one of those guys, and I also been to many guys like that. When that same guy comes in contact with a female, you go into his house 2 weeks later and see what happens. You see what happens. You'll see, there's decorations and there's more appliances, there's more furniture, there's flower pots, there's unlimitedly more paraphernalia there. And then you go into that same house a few years later. Now there's 2 or 3 more humans there. There's a dog. There may be a cat. Possibly, if you're lucky, there's 2 cars. So in this way, when man and woman come together, there's an expansion of the material energy. And for a staunch Vaishnava, everything can be used in Krishna's service. We hear about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He prays in his famous bhajan, "Oh, my wife, my children, my family, my house, my job, everything is yours, O Nanda Kishore." Bhaktivinoda Thakur prays like that. But for the conditioned soul and for the regular, Bhakta Joe out there, we have to be very, very careful with the material energy. And this is why Bhagavatam is putting this point out. It is that we hear examples of Paramahamsa householders, but we should always think that I'm the most unqualified. And that's what I seem to think when I read the Bhagavatam, that these instructions are for me. These very heavy instructions, no matter what position I'm at, is I'm not the one who's going to be the exception. I'm the one who's going to be smashed by the material energy. There are always exceptions. So there's an expansion of material energy. And because of that expansion, there's potential to become materially attached because of the concept of aham mameti, I, me, mine. So one who is just having one little apartment or one little room, he's thinking, I have my room, which is also Maya. But then when the woman comes, now I have my wife, I have my children, I have my dog, my cat, my job, my society, my friendship, my love. And in this way, in order to maintain these things, the man goes into illusion and he forgets his bhajan of the Lord. And I was just speaking to one devotee, who is a devotee, an initiated devotee. But he was saying to me, he said, "Prabhu, I'm so immersed in household life, I can't even chant my rounds. I can't, but after I get out, I'll be a devotee." And he was lamenting like anything. He was lamenting like anything to me. And I was, he's a very nice person, not a bad person, but this is the risk we take whenever we come in contact with the material energy. Therefore, we have to be very, very staunch Vaishnavas in whatever circumstance, whether one is in household life or not in household life. The point is that one needs to be a very staunch Vaishnava. And that comes from the basic practices. Just like when one is learning martial arts, there's certain basics. And that when you fall back on those basics, you're able to basically defend yourself in a very serious situation. And so those basics are: we chant Hare Krishna nicely. We take Krishna Prasadam. We read these books consistently and we study these books. We associate with devotees nicely. We rise early in the morning. And we really seek out the best and the highest possible association. In this way, one can remain Krishna conscious in any circumstance of life. So there's this element in Krishna consciousness that we hear very, commonly in classes like this and in verses like this. There is the Grihamedi, and then there's the Grihasta. And the Grihasta is not a Grihamedi. But I don't think that being a Grihasta is a very common thing. It is actually a very rare thing to be a real, genuine Grihasta. It's not so easy. Just like it's not so easy to be a real brahmachari. It's not so easy to be a real sannyasi. It's not so easy to be a real grihasta. This is not an easy thing. And in fact, the Bhagavatam explains in the 12th canto that an expert man can be a grihasta in Kali Yuga. Someone who is very daksha, he can be grihasta in Kali Yuga. Otherwise, it's very difficult. And I was just hearing a lecture a few weeks ago, Srila Prabhupada lecture. Prabhupada was saying when he came to America, he said, this is such a strange country. And people struggle so hard to just maintain one wife. They struggle so hard. Prabhupada was saying it seems like it's crazy. He was saying this is the misery of this world, and it's so much worse now. I was reading recently that the millennial generation, the average age that they'll be able to buy a house is 56. So, a lot of us have just given up hope for buying a house or these types of things, and it's a scientific fact now that boys are becoming less interested in girls because the stress is so intense. And it's saying boys are generally not getting a girlfriend until their 20s now. So things are really changing because the stress, and then girls aren't having any children because the materialistic society has tricked them into thinking, I need to work so hard. I got to work so hard. I got to be like, to maintain any situation. So in this way, Kali Yuga is just destroying the simple pleasures of the material world. Whereas a simple material, I mean, they're all Maya in a sense, but the material pleasure of family life, the material pleasure of having children, these things are fading away in the Kali Yuga. Just like we hear, there won't be any milk, there won't be any trees. So in this way, people really need to understand the Krishna consciousness movement to have a happy life in whatever circumstance you're in. So there's some very powerful verses. And this is how the Bhagavatam starts in a sense, because the first canto is just the history of the Bhagavatam. It's the Bhagavatam, but it's basically the history. It's the introduction. It's the epilogue to the Bhagavatam. And the second canto is the beginning where Shukadeva Goswami begins to speak the Bhagavatam. And so the very first thing he says, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. He pays obeisances. And then he says this, powerful verse describing the situation of a grihameti. Shrotavyadini Rajendra Nrinam Shanti Sahasrasa Apashyatatvam Atmatatvam Grihesha Grihamedinam. He says that the Grihamedis, those who are Apashyatam Atmatatvam, who are blind to the Atmatattva, the truth of the self, those who are blind to that truth, he explains that they have thousands and thousands of subject matters to speak about, O king, in human society. They're speaking of so many thousands of subject matters. So the first symptom of the Grihamedi is that they're speaking of so many thousands of subject matters. What are those subject matters? Those subject matters are the football, the baseball, the basketball, the Donald Trump, the Democrats, the Republicans, and they find themselves absorbed in these situations and absorbed into what little Johnny's doing and what little Betty's doing. And all these subject matters which take them away from this Atma-tattva, this truth of the self. So a devotee, he has a focus. It doesn't mean that he doesn't work in the world. The word prajalpa means unnecessary conversations about worldly matters. But there are necessary conversations about worldly matters. Like if we have there's some construction going on, as you can hear. And so it's making me think of Mayapur, actually. Beautiful Krishna Kanda, and you always hear some construction in the background. So, we may have to speak about the nature of the construction. This is worldly, but it's necessary for Krishna's service. And also, when in the course of social interaction, there's always some natural affectionate conversations that are going to take place. That's okay also, because those are loving exchanges, but we don't want to dwell on subject matters which are useless. So that's the very first thing he says. Then he says that, people are taking shelter of the fallible soldiers. He explains this verse, that the next thing he says is, Nidraya, forget the Sanskrit. Nidraya hirte vyaktam vyavyayena chavavayaha diva charte haya rajam kutumba baranenava. At the Grihamedi, what are they doing? They're absorbed in the daytime, they're making money and maintaining family members, and at night they're sleeping or enjoying sex. This is the nature of a Grihamedi. This is the nature of the materialistic person. And so this enjoying sex doesn't just mean sex in itself in the sense of the act of sex. It means enjoying all the elements and all the byproducts of sex life and that rasa. And so in this way, the Grihamedi, he simply lives for this. Let me come home and speak to my wife. Let me come home and enjoy with my family. And in the daytime, let me work very, very hard so I can get a house when I'm 56 years old. This is the process of materialistic life. Let me work very, very hard so I can, have a home and make money. And so in this way, this attachment develops immediately. I have to keep this going. I have to keep this going. I have to keep it going. It's an addiction, actually. It's the same as anybody who's had an addiction knows. You're always thinking, how can I keep the addiction going? And so material life, we're ultimately all addicted to Maya. Addiction is just a manifestation of the disease in our heart of addicted to Maya. And so I'm addicted to Maya, therefore how am I going to keep it going? How am I going to get it going? And all the plans come. All of the plans and schemes immediately arise, which will ultimately fail. They're going to fail no matter what. There's no doubt about it. Any materialistic plan we make is going to fail. And so what we get, when we go down that path, I was speaking to my spiritual master once, And he was speaking kind of on a heavy subject matter like this. He was saying, when people jump into the material way of life, they have some material desire and they think, I'm going to get married and do this. He said, yeah, basically, things may work, things may be really good, but after some time they realize, oh my God, I got cheated. And then it's too late. It's too late to back out. I'm so entangled now. And so then it's just a matter of working through all this karma. And so in that way, we become cheated by the material energy. So then Shukadeva Goswami says, Deha patya kalatradish atma sanyash vasatyapi tesham pramato nidhanam pashyanapi napashyati. He says that those blinded people take shelter of fallible soldiers like the body, children, family, and wife. Although they see that everybody else is dying, they don't realize of their own imminent destruction. They don't see that I'm on the death march right now. I'm on the death row. I'm on the trail of tears. I'm going to my death. They don't see that. And so they take shelter of all these fallible soldiers. And in the end, what do they have? And so it's a good meditation to think about when we're, getting materialistic. If I were given a terminal cancer sentence that I'm going to die in a month, what would that do to my consciousness? How would I change? All my plans would basically melt away. If I have any materialistic plans, they melt away immediately, correct? And then what's your plan? Your plan is basically doing what I'm doing right now, right here. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hear Bhagavatam, worship the deity, speak your realizations, hear realizations. So this is the real life. This is actually the genuine life of the person, of the soul, to do this, to hear and be a devotee of the Lord. Everything else is simply a necessity. Simply a non-necessity for the material world. So then Shukadeva Goswami, the conclusion is therefore, if you want to be free from all miseries, you should hear about, chant about, and remember the personality of Godhead. Tasmat sarvatma bharata Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari. Shrotavyascha kirtatavyascha smarantavyas chetatabayam. Therefore, you should hear about, chant about, remember, and serve the personality of Godhead, Hari, who is the remover and destroyer of all misery. And then he says, no matter what you do, the end of life, the goal of the end of life is to remember Narayan. He says, whether you're yoga, whether you do Sankhya, whether you do your Swadharma Paranishtayaha, whether you do your Dharma, it doesn't matter. Janmalabha Parapumsam, Ante Narayana Smritihi. The goal of life is to remember Narayan at the time of death. This is what we're all setting up to. So, in any case, we should understand that a grihasta is a person who is doing all these things and is aware of all these things and is acting in Krishna consciousness, not someone who's being taken away by the material energy. And so there's good examples in the Bhagavatam where we can learn. And the best example that's commonly given in regard to the grihasta versus the grihamedi is, the best grihasta example we have Devahuti and Kardama. And on the other side of things, we have Kasapya and Diti. And so we know the story of Kasapya and Diti. And Kasapya was, of course, he was a sage, he was a Prajapati. He was a very religious man. But when temptation approached in the form of Diti, we see that in that whole circumstance, there was one thing lacking. No one was thinking of Krishna. No one was thinking what's going to give pleasure to Krishna. Diti was thinking what's going to give pleasure to me. And Kasapya was thinking this is probably going to cause us a lot of trouble if we do this. But that in itself is not enough to stop us from doing something stupid. We all know that, I know this is going to hurt me. I know I shouldn't do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's the way Maya works. We're not strong enough to defeat it, even if we have some knowledge about how it's going to hurt us. What's going to defeat it is when we have so much attachment to the person we love that I would never do that to Krishna. I would never do that to my guru. I would never want to do that to my spiritual master, where I would, break my vows of Krishna consciousness. And so therefore, if we're not developing attachment to Krishna, when these times come, we will fail, undoubtedly. And so we know, of course, Diti and Kasapya did their thing, and then demons were born. Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu terrorized the whole universe. On the other side of things, we have the example of Kardama, which I speak about a lot because he's very inspiring to me. Kardama was, of course, a very staunch brahmachari, performing austerities for thousands of years to perfect his life. And in the course of his austerities, he found that I have a material desire. First thing you can learn from Kardama, he was honest with himself. It's very, very powerful to be honest with yourselves. Oh, yes, I'm not a Paramahamsa. Vaisheshika Prabhu always says, if you fall down because you thought these things, you thought, I'm a pure devotee, I'm liberated. So Vaisheshika Prabhu always has these devotees, when they fall down, he says, repeat after me, I am not a pure devotee. I am not liberated. And so we start thinking like, I'm not humble even, we start thinking like that, then all of a sudden we are, we're going down. And so Kardama Muni was very honest with himself. And so he continued. But what did he do? Even though he had this material desire, what did he do? Nothing. He continued to chant Hare Krishna and perform his spiritual duties. That's what he did. He didn't do anything to try to seek out to fix this situation. He just continued to be a very staunch devotee of the Lord. And in time, Lord Vishnu appeared to him. Lord Vishnu appeared to him and said, my dear Kardama, I am so pleased with you. You are such a wonderful devotee. Kardama said, my dear Lord, I have to be honest with you. I have a material desire. I love you and I want to be a pure devotee, but this material desire is burning me. He says, I desire a wife. And Vishnu said, yeah, don't worry about it. Every arrangement has been made. And in the end, you'll come back to me. So it's nice to admit, if I'm not there yet, it's a good thing to admit. But the point is that a pure devotee, even in the beginning stage, it's not that they don't have desires in a sense, it's that they don't ever go to the Lord or act on those desires. The pure devotee doesn't go, dear Lord, help me fulfill this, help me fulfill this. Dear Lord, take away this desire. Take this away, whether I have to go through it or whether I have to just lose it. You just take it away. Please take it away. In the end, I just want you. That's intelligence. And so Kardama Muni acted in such a way. And then, of course, a few days later, 3 days later, Swayambhuva Manu beams down with Devahuti. And it's described Devahuti was so beautiful that the demigods would fall out of their airplanes when they would see her playing basketball on the roof. And so then Swayambhuva Manu says, my dear Kardama, I find you a very suitable husband for my daughter Devahuti. And he says in one very nice statement, he says that if you had gone out and you had tried to make this happen on your own, you would have degraded your position as a brahmana and as a great sage. You would have had to go and ask me, can I marry your daughter? It would have degraded you. When actually you're above me, you're a sage, you're a brahmana, I'm just a kshatriya. He said, therefore, because Devahuti has come to you by the laws of providence, has come to you on its own accord, you should consider. And so this is the way that we should act in Krishna consciousness. Our happiness and our distress, all of the material paraphernalias that are to come to us, they're already written in the book. The karma's already there. So why should we focus on these things? They're already going to happen. Let us focus on chanting Hare Krishna. Let us focus on trying to distribute Krishna consciousness. Let us focus on our own spiritual advancement and the spiritual advancement of others, rather than focusing on these material things which are destined by our karma. So Kardama accepted. And what did Kardama do? It's described, right? Immediately after Devahuti came, what did Kardama do? He immediately went back into meditation. She just was standing there. He just immediately went back into meditation. He just immediately, I'm back on Krishna now. I'm going to focus on my thing. And Devahuti served him and helped him in that regard for a long, long time. We say chant 50 rounds before you have a child. No, Kardama and Devahuti, they did thousands of years of austerity first, meditating. And so after so long, Devahuti's like, my dear husband, not really working. I'm getting sick. I'm skinny. And I would like to have children. And so Kardama then, says, okay, he was very pleased with her. And so he says, go down into the lake. And there was a bunch of mermaids down there that gave her a makeover. And she came out extraordinarily beautiful. And then Kardama manifested with his own mystic power. It even astonished him. He manifested this mansion spaceship, which they went into, and they had a 10,000-year adventure flying through the stars and, having a beautiful, loving relationship with each other. And, we don't got to get all the details of that. But at the end, what did Devahuti say? I'm unsatisfied. It was a waste of time. I'm unsatisfied. She regretted it. Bhagavad Vikash Maharaj was one of the lecturers, and I watched it, and he was saying, he was with some devotees when they were leaving their body, and they were just regretting like anything, all the sense gratificatory activities they did, even though they're devotees, like they were regretting like anything. Oh, Maharaj, I did this, and it's like Maharaj was saying, this is not where you want to be at the time of death, And so Devahuti, she was in regret. And so they were a perfect Grihastha couple. And out of their Grihastha life, what was the result? The fruit of that was they had the Supreme Lord as their child. I mean, it was a very pious and proper devotional Grihastha life. The Supreme Lord was their child. What can, we say, we want to make a devotee child. This is the Supreme Lord himself. But still, to show us example, Devahuti was, and Devahuti's on the same platform as all of Krishna's mothers, Sachi and Devaki and Yashoda. No, Yashoda's on a higher level, but she's on that Shakti Tattva platform as Krishna's mother. And so Devahuti, but she was regretting like anything. And so Kardama left. Kardama went to, purify, perfect his life. And Devahuti was hearing from her son and also perfected her life. But the point that's made here is that the Grihastha life it was done because they needed to work through this karma. And they did it in a proper way, and they did it in a devotional way, but it was not the end in itself. When we were in Kolkata, Radhe Shyam Prabhu asked my spiritual master to give a class on Grihastha life because many of the young youths that were there were going to go into Grihastha life. And so he gave the most incredible lecture. I mean, really, Radhe Shyam Prabhu went and paid full dandavats and said, come to Pune, which Gurudev just went to Pune, and give this lecture to all of my Grihasthas. He was so amazed with it. Such a beautiful lecture. And started off the lecture, unnecessary. You don't need it. You need to eat. You need to sleep. But you don't need to have sex. It's not necessary. Very just like, it was like a heavy, heavy thing. But then he, flipped it around. He said, but if you can't, and he gave this beautiful talk on how, okay, this rasa between man and woman is not the end goal. It's a stage of life, but it's not the end goal. And so you have to keep the end in mind. What is the end in mind? I want to be a pure devotee of Krishna. I don't want material desires. And so if done properly, whether one apparently takes sannyas or not, whether one is vanaprastha, in whatever situation, if done properly, one becomes detached and one becomes attached to Krishna via the process of varnashram. Daivi varnashram is meant to lead one to attachment to Krishna. And so we see that in this pastime of Kardama and Devahuti. The sense gratification was regretted. But the fruit of that was that she actually performed a lot of devotional service to Kardama. And from that devotional service, she was able to have the Supreme Lord as her son, and she was enlightened by the Supreme Lord and went back to Godhead. And so this is the actual process of Grihastha life. So it could be noted here, and the last points I'll make before we ask for questions, it could be noted here that when we're honest with ourselves, it's really helpful and advantageous for our bhakti. Prabhupada translates the word karma yoga to devotional service in the Bhagavad Gita, and he translates the word the word bhakti yoga to devotional service in the Bhagavad Gita. But they're different in a sense, karma yoga and devotional service. What's the difference? The difference is explained by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in verses 25 and 26 of the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Verse 25 is famously Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yome Bhakti Priyachati, explaining, offer me with love and devotion, fruit, flower, leaf, or water, I will accept it. And this is the quintessential verse for Bhakti Yoga. And it's described by Vishwanath that if one is unqualified for the rest of the 9th chapter, we hear about the 9th chapter, Satatam Kirtayantamam, always chanting my glories, all these powerful verses of Bhakti Yoga, we hear about them in the 9th chapter. Mahatmanastumam Partha, Daivim Prakriti Mashrita. The great souls are under the divine nature because they know who I am. Therefore, they're always engaged in my service with determination. And there's all these verses describing Bhakti Yoga. And then it describes, yeah, I'm so wonderful that if you just offer me a leaf, I'll be satisfied. But then Krishna, anticipating Arjuna's doubt, said the quintessential Karma Yoga verse, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Yat karosi yadashnasi yajjosi dadasi yat tapasyasi konte tat karosa manarpanam. Therefore, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, give away, whatever charity you perform, do that for me. And so the difference is that if one is on that lower stage, the Karma Yoga stage, they're not so attached to Krishna. They're basically attached to, I'm attached to this, let me offer it to Krishna. I'm attached to this, let me offer it to Krishna. I'm attached to this, let me offer it. I can do it in Krishna consciousness. That's pious. That's Karma Yoga. Krishna accepts that and it's greatly purifying. But that is not Shuddha Bhakti. That point has to be understood clear. Shuddha Bhakti is, I'm attached to Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, etc. That's it. That's becoming a pure devotee. And that's what's going to give you Yatma Suprasidhiti. Only that and that alone. So dovetailing is a way in which we purify materialistic propensities. And so the Varnashram system is something we go through. You go through Varnashram because you're attached to a certain type of work. That's the concept of Karma Yoga. I'm going to detach from the fruits, but I'm going to attach to the work. And by being attached to the work, I start to realize I'm not the doer. I develop transcendental knowledge. And in that situation, I become purified of that propensity. And by becoming purified of that propensity, now I can engage fully in Krishna consciousness. And so the point is that we're not just karma yogis. We may be attached to a particular type of work, but we do it as an offering to Krishna while simultaneously chanting Hare Krishna, reading the books, engaging in sadhana bhakti. And in this way, we purify ourselves of the materialistic propensities. So at the end of life, we can become pure devotees and realize all I want is Krishna. I don't want anything else but Krishna. That's it. That's Krishna consciousness. That's the goal. Ante Narayana Smritihi. And so Krishna says, Tasmat Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mam Anusmaram Yudicha Maya Pratam Manu Bhudhir Mame Vishyashisham Shayaha. Therefore, perform your prescribed duty. Because we have a prescribed duty. If we're not Paramahamsas, we have a prescribed duty because we have to act in a certain capacity. I'm being forced to act a certain way. Therefore, perform your prescribed duty, but at the same time, remember Krishna, chant Hare Krishna, and in this way, you'll come to Krishna. So we'll stop here for any quick last-minute questions or comments. Chandrika Sarvakati.
I agree with what you said about, in college, how males will only have limited things, and females in college too, they don't have as much either. And of course, coming together with the expansion in Grahastha life, the males have a lot too. They take pride in their tools and their, woodwork sheds and whatnot. So, so that, but, that's obviously Grahastha life. With that expansion, you need both because you're having a whole family together. Yeah. And also just, the importance of having children too, or getting together and having children is important too, because we want to raise children in Krishna consciousness as well. So, of course, there's the challenges are there, just like anything in life, there's a challenge. But I think it's also a very beautiful thing too, to have children. It's nature, it's natural. And for the mother and the child, I think it's just a wonderful combination as well. So I just wanted to kind of add that part in there. So,
yeah, of course, it's Krishna conscious Grihastha life is Krishna says, I am sex life, not contrary to religious principles. It is a spiritual situation. And I was trying to make that point that Devahuti and Kardama, they were able to have the Supreme Lord as their child. And there's so many examples. Of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was able to bring great devotee into the world in terms of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And going back originally, that the point is that this canto is going to really get heavy with this type of thing. And we're just, this is just taking one step in. It's going to get really dark and really heavy with this stuff. But the point is that this is just, it's more of a warning. It's more of a warning because we have examples in the Bhagavatam of great grihastas also. But when one is in contact with the material energy, there's always that danger. So one has to be very fixed up. That's the point. Thank you very much. Lalita, Priya?
Yeah, I just think there's like this tendency in human nature to, the idea that the grass is always greener on the other side, right? And so like oftentimes there'll be someone who's taken a path of renunciation, and then they're thinking, maybe I should have gone the other way. And then oppositely, people that have taken the path of family life, they'll often talk to me and saying, oh no, maybe I should have done that. And so what can you say on that to that aspect of human nature?
We have to be pure devotees. Whatever situation you are, be a pure devotee. Don't change your position. That's like Lord Chaitanya says, don't change your position. He says that. Better stay in your own position and be a pure devotee by hearing, chanting, and spreading Krishna consciousness. And in any position, if someone is really engaged in that, they're ultimately inspiring, transcendental, amazing devotees. That's what it is. But it's let me change this without changing the, Prabhu, are you chanting good japa? No. Prabhu, are you reading the books? No. But I think if I do this, I'll be better. Well, I've seen before where people have moved into a different position of life and it's helped them, but not because they moved to a different position of life, because they got better association. Mm-hmm. I've seen people that have gone from being really struggling to getting married and being better. But it's not because they got married, but they married a very good devotee of the Lord. And in that way, they're very surrendered to the service of that person. And so they became much more fixed up by that association. But it has nothing to do with the material circumstance changing. So that's it. Just be a devotee. Okay. Divya has something. Lights haven't gone off yet.
So the key to Grihastha life is to have Krishna in the center.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We worked really hard, and there was like a lot of austerity. And we just always prayed, we just want to retire and serve.
And do so.
You're the perfect example of someone who is beyond, what I'm speaking of is nothing to do with devotees like yourselves or Mother Sandamani and Diro, where this is a service completely based on service. Yeah. And, you guys are always reading Bhagavatam, always doing service. I know Damodar is, you can't really find him unless he's doing services. Yeah. He's always engaged in Krishna consciousness. So it's a different situation wherein the goal of all of our lives is to be like you, actually, to be where we can be fully engaged in service. Whether, if I'm like this and I'm in Maya, if I'm a brahmachari in Maya, it's far more advantageous for me to be a grihastha like yourself and be fully engaged in Krishna consciousness as you are. And that's the goal. And so grihastha life, brahmachari life, sannyas life, it's all meant to take us to that kind of stage where we're attached to that service.
So, and then one other thing, I was just thinking, we live next door to my son in the summer, and he has no association, and he gets with a woman who's not a devotee. And I don't even preach to him because I just love him, because there's no hope for him. He went all through Guru, what's that?
We give him prasadam.
Yeah, we give him a lot of prasadam. Always lots of prasadam, and he loves it, and he did go all through Gurukula, but he feels like been there, done that, but yeah, the key is to have Krishna in the center of your relationship, and always read and chant and watch lectures and hear lectures,
I was speaking to one grihastha couple, and they were asking me for some advice. And it was kind of a serious situation. But I said, you guys, for someone who seems to be having a challenge, you're so very respectful of each other. And so that's because we keep Krishna in the center.
Yeah.
So I was really impressed by that. Thank you all very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Prabhupada ki.